So I have learned that through my own walk as a mom, and as well as hundreds of friends and thousands of clients, that all new moms struggle. All new moms struggle. And whether if it's postpartum depression, the baby blues, postpartum anxiety, that all new moms struggle. And even though my book is not just for postpartum depression, it's to walk all new moms through that first hard year of motherhood, to help them through the desperate days, to have a safety plan or a wellness plan in order for success. It's all about basically preparing you, because not just the day that your baby is born, not just a baby is born, but a mom is born. And I believe strongly that we're not just born great mothers, but we become great mothers. And at the end of this book, my big goal, and I have it on a dry erase board and huge, messy letters in my offices, my goal is for you to feel, and for all women to feel like they have what it takes to be the mom that God wants them to be.
Hey friends, it's Mary, and this is the Mary Jervich Show, a podcast that champions today's working women to gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to up-level your career while strengthening your faith and living your dream life, all in record time. We'll cover topics like career advancement, leadership, personal development, faith, and health and wellness, so you can intentionally create a career and life full of more abundance, joy, and love. Let's get started. Hey friends, welcome to this episode of the Mary Jervich Show. I am so honored to have the privilege to introduce you to our guest today. I had the opportunity to meet our guest about 6 months ago, probably, maybe even a little bit more, when we did a summit together. It was such a beautiful experience to really be able to support Christian career women. And after connecting, I just knew I wanted to bring her in so she could speak to our listeners. So I'm so grateful that she's here today. Let me tell you all about Rachael Elmore. After becoming a mom in 2012, Rachael fought to overcome postpartum depression in her own life. And when she got better, she dedicated her life and career focusing on giving new moms the help that wasn't there for her. Rachael is one of only 3 winners of Lisa TerKeurst's book proposal bootcamp. Over the last year, Rachael has partnered with Lisa to bring her new book, A Mom is Born, to life. Rachael has written the book that she needed during her own struggle with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. Rachael is a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor in North Carolina with 19 years of experience in the counseling field. She is also a nationally certified counselor by the National Board of Certified Counselors. Rachael, we are so excited to have you here. Welcome on in.
Hi, thank you, Mary, for having me. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, well, I know when we met, months ago, gosh, it might be 6 months ago now when we were on that amazing summit together. I knew I just wanted to get to know you more, hear your incredible heart, and get to share your message. I just feel like you have so much to offer, and you just cover such an important topic that so many women just feel left out in the dark about, and we just don't really know where to get good resources from to really help us be able to move forward in a meaningful way, in a way that's really nurturing to ourselves, which I think is what God really wants for us. So I couldn't be more excited to have you here today. Rachael, as we get started today, why don't you just go ahead and kind of share with me, what brought you to this amazing work that you do?
Well, I knew from the time, it's actually kind of a funny story, from the time I was about 5 years old, and I would just be out and about. I would be at the park. I would be in the grocery store line with my mom, and people would just start telling me their problems. And it still never ceases to amaze me. My friends still laugh if we're out and about, we're at a restaurant, and the waitress will just kind of look at me and just kind of share her soul. And I remember my dad telling me when I was 5 years old, Rachael, you should probably be a therapist, because it was grown adults, not in a creepy way, but grown adults coming to me and saying, I've really been thinking about, I've really been thinking I'm pretty depressed, or I'm really thinking that I need to work on my relationship with my son. And so I'm a kid and people are literally opening up to me. And so that story kind of comes to full fruition when I was in college. I had a hard story. I went through a very hard breakup, woke up one morning and called my mom and said, Mom, I can't get out of bed to go to class. And she was like, Rachel, I think it's time that you go and talk to a counselor. And went and sat in my first counseling session on the other side of the couch, realizing, oh my goodness, this is the career path for me. This is where God is calling me. And so with that, that was how I came to become a therapist. Years down the road, which has brought me to kind of my recent passion and my book that's coming out, is the fact that long after I was already a licensed therapist, after I had my first baby, I suffered with some pretty bad postpartum depression in 2011. And already a licensed therapist, and luckily knew exactly what it was. And God was so good in that, it's not like I was in the dark. I knew exactly, this is postpartum depression. And there weren't really any resources, Mary, out there for me. And I mean, like nothing. And that was a time no one was talking about it on social media. It was still a very hush-hush issue, very misunderstood. At the time, even our DSM for diagnostic manual for psychiatry has a paragraph that's about 4 lines on postpartum depression out of 1,736 pages. And so was a very misunderstood situation. And when I talk about postpartum depression, I'm also talking about the baby blues and postpartum anxiety. And so I've spent the last decade of my career dedicated to helping women with the help that wasn't there for me. My book that's coming out in May, it's really exciting. It's basically the treatment plan that I use on 1,000 women. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I love, love, love working with women in all seasons, in all of their struggles, working mamas, as well as just moms that are struggling and helping them struggle well. So that's a little bit about my background and my heart song, which is just professionally giving back to moms with, everything that I had to search so hard to find, I guess, 11 years ago.
Yeah, and this book is incredible. It's crazy, right? Because this is 2012, you're having your child. Like, that's not 40 years ago. That's not 30 years ago, right? Like, that's just a little over 10 years ago. It's not that long ago. And it seems like, while the world has progressed so far, how could we not have information on this? How could this not be something that was talked about? How are there not resources for women? It's almost mind-blowing. But the more I see things in life, I'm like, so much of the things that we could or should have been taught as children, maybe some of the information wasn't there yet. And I'm really grateful that you would say, here's this huge need, right? You step up. God's telling me I need to do this thing. I'm sure there was some moments of imposter syndrome where you're like, how the heck am I supposed to do this, Lord?
Mm-hmm.
And here you are stepping up into this. And my only hope and prayer is that, people get your book, people share your book, and that this information really gets into the hands of women that need it. Because like I said, so many things, whether it's, I just recently started learning about how our hormones are different on different parts of our cycle, which makes us think differently, which makes us communicate differently, which makes us, and I think so many of us as women, I think just so many of us as women unknowingly go through these roller coasters in life, not even realizing that it's okay. We're supposed to want more carbs this time of life. We're not supposed to want to exercise this day. We're not supposed to want to take on this ambitious project because, our main reason for being created here is, yes, we're supposed to love others, be the light of God, but we are supposed to reproduce. That's how we continue on as humans. And so if we're not nurturing our bodies in these ways, then we're not really giving ourselves what we need. Do you see that a lot in your practice, where women are coming in not really understanding how they were designed and how their bodies really operate, and they deal with things that maybe it's not that they're not real things, they're real things, but it's more of an acceptance and understanding that we need?
Absolutely, 100%. I was talking to a mom yesterday that was only 9 months out from giving birth, and she's a new mom, and she was listing all of the symptoms of just because it takes us at least 12 months for our hormones to normalize after we give birth. And I mean, obviously that doesn't even take into account just our cycles and just everything that I know you're so passionate about with talking about on your podcast, and just the fact that our bodies are different. Absolutely. I feel like a lot of women are so surprised when I just talk about some of the basic, like, of course you crave carbs on this day. Of course you process decision making in a different way, even in certain places in our journey with hormones and with oxytocin and dopamine and all of those chemicals. And I feel like it's such a aha moment for women when they realize that it's not made up. It's not like someone just said, "Oh yeah, you're hormonal." And I very often say it's not always rational, it's chemical. And even though there's nothing hysterical about us, and I even kind of hate that term because we know where it comes from, is that, women, that it comes from our uterus and that's what makes us tick. With that being said, it is so fascinating. And I love being able to educate women on the fact of like, yes, this is playing a part in what you're feeling and you're not crazy. Like there's nothing crazy about the fact that you feel these different things when we're going through different hormonal shifts in our lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So with your book, A Mom is Born, what is the thesis of it? What does it address? Who is it for? And what are some of the big takeaways?
So I have learned that through my own walk as a mom, and as well as hundreds of friends and thousands of clients, that all new moms struggle. And whether if it's postpartum depression, the baby blues, postpartum anxiety, the all new moms struggle. And even though my book is not just for postpartum depression, it's to walk all new moms through that first hard year of motherhood, to help them through the desperate days, to have a safety plan or a wellness plan in order for success. It's all about basically preparing you, because not just the day that your baby is born, not just a baby is born, but a mom is born. And I believe strongly that we're not just born great mothers, but we become great mothers. And at the end of this book, my big goal, and I have it on a dry erase board and huge, messy letters in my office, is my goal is for you to feel, and for all women to feel like they have what it takes to be the mom that God wants them to be. I want them to read through this book and believe that God's design is for us to be good mothers. And this lie that we're bad moms and not that we don't need to improve on things. I'm always improving on my mothering process and not yelling at my kids when I shouldn't and things like that. But the fact of this lie that the enemy wants us to believe that we're bad moms so that we can't raise up this mighty generation of warriors for him. If we believe we're inept as moms, isn't that one of his favorite ways to tear us down? So I want moms to have all of the tools that I've worked really hard, honestly, just personally to come up with. I want to hand it in a book because I can't see all the moms out there that need to be seen. And my schedule isn't available for that. But I want to take everything I've learned and say, here you go. Here you go. Let me give you a plan for how you can enter motherhood and not be reactive and just react to the hardship, but attack it on the front end and not have to deal with it when your kids are my age. But start motherhood, even if your baby's 24 months old, it doesn't matter. Even if you're pregnant, to go ahead and start motherhood on that foot and to go ahead and hit a lot of the lies from a psychological and a spiritual standpoint to be able to be the mom that God wants you to be. And I just love it so much. I love watching that moment when a mom will say things like, I've realized my postpartum depression does not define me as a mother. Or when they say, you know what, Rachel, I am a good mom. Do I still need to work on things? Yes. It's just, I think it's the best moment of my career is watching that click. And it's through a lot of psychology and a lot of Jesus. And I would love to sit here and say, oh, Mary, I'm just that great of a therapist. I do think I'm good at what I do, but it's really the hard work that the women put in themselves. And it's really a lot of what God does through their hearts to get them to be exactly where they're supposed to be in his plan.
That is so beautiful because, on the last episode, we talked about how do you value yourself? That was the entire episode, and really just digging into where does that value come from? And I think what you just said is so important because God wants us to value ourselves highly. He wants us to see ourselves the way that he sees us. And he sees us without flaw, without blemish. He's not condemning us. And I think we have that tendency as moms because there's all of these perceptions in the world that says you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, you're supposed to do this. And I don't know, I had this realization over the holiday this year. I follow different influencers or different things. And there's one person that I follow and she's a mom and she talks about things, but sometimes I'm like, should I stop following her? And she's actually posted some stuff that was on the other side. I'm like, okay, I won't, because she was talking about like all of the like negative things, right? Like, well, we have to do everything as moms for the holidays. We have to do everything. And I'm thinking like, And I hear these conversations, I have these conversations with women, but I just have this mentality of, I'm not a victim, right? I'm not a victim of my life. It it takes time. It takes time to be their mom. And the schools, I mean, this is one thing I wish schools would stop, is so many special days. I'm like, there was this reel I saw the other day. It's like, what are we going to do? Where are we going to, we spend all this money and all this time collecting all of these things that just, it's just too much, right? It's, my kids don't even want to dress up all the time anymore because it's just too much. But at that point in time, it was like, okay, she could run to these stores. She could help me organize a closet that, only a woman could organize. And I think that's one of the things. There are things where I used to have these expectations about, well, how others should be able to do things or how others should be able to put things back. And coming in as a stepmom situation was very different, but it was so funny. I was on a vacation recently and we were getting ready to take a photo and we had a group, and someone in the group said, okay, we got to have someone take the photo. Okay, we need to find a woman to take the photo. And it was just such like a, oh my gosh, like how many times have I asked someone to take a photo that was not a woman, that the photo was just terrible, right? Because we just look at things differently. We care about things differently. And yeah, I just love for you to kind of speak into the seasons and just kind of understanding where kind of we are and how it's okay for things to shift.
Yeah, well, and things, they definitely do shift as our kids get older. And I just always say that the struggles to the moms out there and to the stepmoms, because you guys are all moms, and how exciting that is. And I know it's a different journey, but I love your story too, Mary. That's awesome. But I always say that the struggles, they really kind of migrate from physical to mental. I mean, I typically, I'm not woken up in the middle of the night these days. I'm typically physically, I'm able to have time to work out and all of those things. I don't have spit up all over my clothes. I don't have the physical challenges that I used to have with young babies. I just remember how tired my wrists and hands were. And even I got tendonitis from lifting my babies too much this way. But now the issues are mental. It's up in the middle of the night wondering, are we in the right school for both of my boys? Or should we maybe pray about changing schools when they're in middle school? I know my older son's about to go into middle school next year, which is a whole different challenge of just, now we have to actually pick our courses, and now we have to actually talk about career paths and things like that. And so I just feel like as we make that shift, we're making that shift to the mental challenges. And so it's not as much, I do feel like the mom guilt does shift as we go into having elementary and middle school and even high school children. It's more of just, are we making the right parenting decisions? And it's so, I feel like it's harder now to work full time than it was when my children were babies and toddlers, because there are so many things with school and events and after school clubs and so many like sports and all the special days, and we need a cat in the hat day, or we're going to have tie-dye day. And I'm finishing my day with seeing clients all day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to locate this item. Does Target have this? What am I going to do? And so hopefully, to answer your question there, I feel like the things just become so mental, and it's just a whole different set of challenges, and we have to find different solutions for those challenges.
Yeah. And as you were kind of saying this, I started just kind of thinking through, right? So, okay, so we talked about when they're babies, and I just kind of like to go through the different stages and kind of, what are the biggest things that we could be looking for that are coming up? So we just have the baby, maybe there's the postpartum depression. How do we know what that looks like? How do we kind of attack, what do we do, right? If we think we might be having this, and then what can we really do to nurture our baby at that age? What do they really need when they're just that baby?
Mm-hmm. So postpartum depression, about 20% of women, it's estimated, suffer from postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. They estimate that all new moms, adoptive, foster moms, stepmoms, all new moms go through sort of a baby blues period, even if it's just going through it, that adjustment to motherhood and the new identity of mom. And so with that, really the difference between the postpartum depression and baby blues is severity and how long it lasts. And so the baby blues, they say, lasts about 2 weeks, especially for either adoptive moms and when you have an infant. And so anything that lasts longer than 2 weeks, and we're talking about feelings of hopelessness, it's very similar to depression symptoms, kind of that obsession over whether or not, like, do I need to watch my baby sleep? Are they going to stop breathing? So that's where some of the anxiety comes in. And I just felt my story, and I always say postpartum depression, we're sisters, we're not twins. So every case is completely different. But I always want to debunk the myth of you don't want to be a mom or you don't love your baby. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact of you just are really having a hard time accepting and dealing with this new transition of motherhood. And you're just so exhausted, and the chemicals in your brain honestly may need some transition. You might need a little bit of medicine. You might need a visit with your doctor. Not everyone needs medicine, but I'm a big fan of medical intervention at times for postpartum depression. It did me wonders. I'm very outspoken about the fact that it was a lot of Jesus and some Wellbutrin for me that was really pivotal during that season. And so with that being said, we look for some of those symptoms of depression that last more than 2 weeks. So if like you're crying all the time, or even for myself, and this isn't everyone, I was afraid to pick up my baby at times when he was screaming because I was just so scared that I might drop him. And I don't want to be triggering to moms. So I want to be really cautious to not go into too much detail there. But with that being said, that's when we start to say, let's talk to our doctor, definitely talk to your OB/GYN, send them an email through the portal and say, hey, I'm just not feeling like myself. And so those steps that we take there is we talk to our doctor and we reach out to somebody like me. We reach out to a counselor. You can go through aacc.net and pick a Christian counselor if you want, or you can definitely go through your insurance and find a counselor and then get connected with those resources in order to just start feeling better. So when moms just aren't feeling like themselves, to answer kind of the first part of your question, those are the steps to take. Is it's like, okay, I've been feeling like this for more than 2 weeks. I'm feeling more sad than happy. Maybe it's time for me to talk to a counselor, talk to a pastor, and maybe even talk to my doctor. And I always have to say this on every podcast that I ever record or in every Instagram live. I always have to say, any mom out there that's having thoughts of hurting themselves or hurting someone else, the next stop is not to keep even listening to this podcast. It's to seek, medical attention immediately. And so I know I always hate putting kind of my bold-faced print there, but I always want anyone listening, not just moms, that if they're having those kinds of thoughts, that's the next step to take, with just making sure that you're safe and that you're well. And so with that, the second part of your question was, how do we nurture our babies during that season? And I always like to talk about bonding. I wasn't able to hold my older son for the first 30 minutes of his life after birth because I had a reaction to the anesthesia during my C-section. And I was just shaking so much. I was afraid for them to hand him to me. And so we study as psychologists so much about bonding and attachment. And I was so worried. I was like, oh no, I'm going to miss my chance to bond with my baby because we wanted that skin to skin contact. And the more that we've studied attachment, I always want to encourage every woman, every mom listening, that we've learned that bonding and attachment doesn't just occur in those first couple of weeks. For many years, scientists thought that it did, that basically, okay, your chance to bond and really nurture your baby, it's gone out the window if you've missed this window. Friends, that window to bond and nurture your baby and create that attachment, that window, it's not a window. It is a long and wide highway. We have learned that bonding and attachment occurs over literally millions of interactions between caregivers and your child. And we've learned that bonding and attachment, it can occur through a lifespan. It's not just when they're little babies. And so I want moms to know that if they go through a season of illness right after childbirth, or if they adopt, you've not missed your chance to bond with your child. It is this beautiful highway full of grace because God designed our brains that way. How cool is that? That it's not like, oh, I adopted my baby when they were 6 weeks old, so they're not going to bond with me. That's garbage. Because science is so beautiful. It's proven that we have this long highway of grace to be able to bond and nurture our babies. And the way that we do that is we talk to our babies. We sing to our babies. We rock our babies. For some reason, my older son I know a lot of moms might laugh at this, he loved having his diaper changed. I don't know why. And it was funny. Like, I actually didn't mind diaper changes because he would just kick, and he had this little mobile above his changing table. And we would talk to him, giggle with him, blow on his belly, be silly with him. And really, I would just talk to him. And I know it's interesting. A lot of moms forget at 8 months old, a lot of research has shown that babies understand up to 80% of language when they're 8 months old. We don't realize that. And I swear to this day, when I would hold my son and rock him, I would say to my older son, Hunt, I would say, buddy, I need you to take a nap today. Mommy really needs to make some phone calls. I have a headache. That is not your problem. And maybe some people think it's silly to talk to your baby, but talk to your baby, hold your baby. And my boys both love their baths. And I just loved getting them in the kitchen sink and giving them their little bath. And I basically found the moments that I treasured that they treasured, and I maximized those times. So hopefully I answered your other part of your question, which is how do we really enjoy those moments and treasure those moments is we find what we like too. And that's still how I bond with my boys. I really enjoy cooking. And it's fun. Like my boys are getting a little older and we can watch cooking shows and they get in the kitchen and they're really starting to get into, ooh, this is how we make food taste good. And like, I don't particularly enjoy a lot of the stuff that their dad does with them, but that's okay. We find this common ground of what do we enjoy together and we maximize that time with our children.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. So good. Okay, so now they're little babies. We're working moms. We're going back to work. How do like I and one other thing you said there is just whenever we're going through this postpartum depression, the baby blues, whatever we're feeling, right? And even if you don't have those things, I think you can still there's parts of motherhood you just don't enjoy, right? Like you told us what you did enjoy, but there were other things that you didn't enjoy. And so you said find those things you enjoy. I think though, like when we're going through the depression, the anxiety, all of these things, it's important for us just to remember like that is not who you are. And so you don't have to feel shame and guilt about those things because there is a chemical imbalance. It's not identifying as you. So you are not those feelings that you are having. Because that's not who you were before. So it can't just be who you are now. Like we're not a light switch. We don't just turn on and off. Like it's real. So you should get help, but you shouldn't feel guilty or shameful about that because you are a good and loving person. If that's who you were before, you still are.
Yeah. And so to speak to that, I like to talk about in the early years of my career, one of the ways that we get our license, there's one piece of paper on the wall behind me that was the hardest to get, and it's my license as a therapist. So we basically work for free for about 4 to 6 years. We do residencies, internships. And in the early years of my career, I did a lot of in-home therapy and social work in very, very rough areas. And I say this, tell this story very cautiously because I want people to know I actually came from a trailer park. There's no shame in it. Poverty does not make you a bad mom. But part of my job was going and talking to mothers after they had failed narcotic screens and being able to talk to them about the fact that they may have lost funding for their housing or they may have lost different benefits and basically connecting them with resources to make sure that they were safe for that evening. And I had this moment, I was pregnant with my first son. And I was in a home with a mom, a pregnant mother, and she already had 3 children. And there had been multiple complaints from the school. There had been issues with DSS. And she sat on her couch and I had my clipboard and I had to bring her the very hard news that she had failed her narcotic screen and she was going to lose her funding for where she was staying at that time. And she was smoking and I was pregnant and I was sitting there like, I was trying to not inhale. And I searched her face. I'm telling her, we've got to find, another place for you to stay tonight. We've got to find some different ways for you to get connected to resources because this particular housing, you're ineligible to stay here because you failed yet your 4th or 5th drug screen. And she was pregnant at the time. And I searched her face. I kind of did my therapist head nod of like, are you okay? And she was fine. She wasn't worried about how her children were going to sleep that night. She wasn't worried about whether or not she was going to get them fed. I have spent my career, my early years working with bad moms. And what hit me in that moment is bad moms don't worry about whether or not they are bad moms. Good moms do that. Bad moms don't worry about whether or not they're bad moms. Good moms do that. I have worked years with moms that sent their children to school dirty and hungry. They didn't snuggle their children to sleep at night. They didn't comfort them when they had a bad dream. These women were, and I don't ever want this to come across as a judgmental tone, but these women slept great at night, light as a feather. They were fine with their choices. Bad moms don't worry about whether or not they're bad moms. good moms do that. So the very fact that we have concern about whether or not we should do a Pinteresty birthday party or whether or not we yelled at our son and we shouldn't have, I guess I'm raising my hand here because sometimes I have to really temper my anger with my children. The fact that there is that concern about how am I being a good stepmom or my foster mom situation, how am I bringing this in, or which parenting method should I use? Bad moms don't worry about being bad moms. Good moms do that. And that just the presence of that concern usually tells me that you're a pretty good mom. And I just would want to encourage to everyone listening to really challenge themselves and basically learn from my experience of working with a lot of moms that, lost custody of their children. They were fine with their choices. It was a very interesting moment for me as a mother, and would want to encourage mothers listening to hear that loud and clear.
I literally just had chills all over my body. I think that is the message that we need to hear, because we worry about all these different decisions. And, I know you cover so much in your book, and you've covered so much with us here today. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for you, your heart, your message, the work you do. It is no small feat to put a book out, and the fact that you have been given this opportunity, you were selected. We know that this is a total God decision. So kind of as we're wrapping up here today, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't, that you'd like to share?
I would, yeah, there's just one thing. We talked a little bit about mom guilt, and that's kind of been a lot of the podcasts, and honestly, every mom I ever talk to, it's kind of a theme. One thing I always want to share when it comes to mom guilt, or struggling with thinking you're a bad mom, or, struggling to think that you don't measure up as a mother, or you struggle with regrets about working and being a mom. I always want to share the fact that guilt should serve a purpose. And when guilt doesn't serve a purpose, when guilt, like there's absolutely guilt in me if I yell at my son and I shouldn't have. And so that guilt in me causes me to go to him and say, buddy, I should not have fussed at you. Mommy has a headache. That was not my place. I am sorry. And it causes me to repent and go to the Lord and say, God, I just sinned. So guilt should serve a purpose. If guilt doesn't serve a purpose, if guilt is just there to eat and cause you to decay as a woman and as a believer and as a mother and as a worker, then that guilt has to go. And so I know that takes a lot of practice and a lot of skill, and we could rewire our brains by saying no thank you to that guilt over and over again. We can acknowledge maybe what it's trying to do, but if that guilt doesn't serve a purpose, then that guilt has got to go. Guilt should come from God, and if it doesn't serve a purpose, a holy and mighty purpose from Him, then it's not serving His purpose. And so I would encourage anyone listening, just guilt, mom guilt, whatever that guilt should be, if we suffer with that and it tears us down and it doesn't cause us to change for the better, then that guilt has to go.
That is like mic drop moment right there. So profound, because sometimes we're like, well, it's the Holy Spirit talking to us, it's God talking to us, but we know God doesn't condemn us. And so that distinguishing factor of, does it serve a purpose, right? If it's not serving a purpose, that is the enemy. And you want to just squash that, right? Wouldn't He want you to feel guilty? Because you are not going to be out there doing God's work if you're feeling that way. Mm-hmm. Wow. So incredibly beautiful. So incredibly beautiful. So Rachael, I always love to ask all the women that come on my show, or all the guests, I've had some male guests too, who is the most influential woman mentor in your life?
Oh, well, the most influential would definitely be my mom. She's the most fierce, strong woman I've ever met in my life, loves Jesus. She's also brilliant. She's also a writer. She's incredible. Would definitely be my mom. I wanted to mention too, recently in the last few years, very influential in my life has been my book agent, Meredith Brock. She's also the CEO of Proverbs 31 Ministries, who I've been able to partner with a good bit here. And it's been so exciting. I've been able to watch her journey. And, she's really quite young, but she might be one of the toughest girls I've ever met. She's a wife and a mom and a book agent, and she's all the things. She has such solid boundaries. Her yeses are yeses, her nos are nos, and she doesn't apologize for them. And I just love her so much. She has taught me so much. She is harsh, and she has also fought for me in a way that has made my book not just good, but great. It really is. And without her, it would not have been where it is because of the challenges she's given me and the networking and the resources and honestly, just the friendship. And she is just so tough and so solid in her relationship with the Lord, and just how much she is able to not apologize for having to say no. And I always want to I didn't normally wouldn't bring her up, but when I was praying about today, I wanted to bring Meredith up because she is just such a rock solid believer and just a woman of faith and so tough that I just look up to her in so many ways. And she has taught me so much in these last few years.
Yeah. Well, boundaries are so important. And to see people modeling that is incredible, because so often we don't see that modeled. But when we look back at Jesus's life, he had boundaries. Like, he even knew he couldn't do everything. He couldn't go everywhere. He couldn't serve every person, right? He had boundaries too. He couldn't spend his time with every single person. He had his close group of disciples. He spent his time in the temple. Like, he had boundaries. He wasn't going off and trying to do everything. And he worked as a carpenter, so he had a career too. So he was doing all of these things, and we were his family. His disciples were his family. But just to see, he set boundaries. This person set boundaries. Boundaries are so wonderful. They're so freeing. And I love how you just shared that, her no is her no and her yes is her yes. So, so incredible. Well, Rachael, I know listeners are so excited to become readers of your new book. Let us know where we can get A Mom is Born.
So it's already available for pre-order on Amazon. So it's A Mom is Born by Rachael Elmore. You can get it, honestly, it's already up on barnesandnoble.com, thriftbooks.com. But obviously Amazon's kind of the easiest way. I'm about to record the audiobook, so it will go live and it will be available for the ebook. A great way to connect with me and other resources is rachaelelmore.com, and it's RACHAEL Elmore.com. And obviously I post a ton of resources, just lots of freebies, all of the things on my Instagram, which is at Rachael Hunt Elmore, which is just my full name, RACHAEL Hunt Elmore. And connect with me, DM me, reach out. If you're hearing this and thinking you also need some more resources with baby blues postpartum, please, I do answer my DMs. I am not super fancy. I love to connect moms with resources, and just be that help. So that's how we would be able to connect and to be able to find out more about my vision and how I can be there for your listeners.
Well, Rachael, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure to get to hear more from you, and just so much wisdom that you shared here with us today. So listeners, we're so grateful for you. Please share this episode with somebody that you know needs to hear this message, whether it be with the postpartum or the mom guilt, or just making your yeses yeses and your nos nos. So grateful for you. Until we meet again, remember, you're only one plan away from your next promotion. And God, He's not done with you.
Hey friend, thank you for listening today. Be sure to join us next week for another great episode. If you receive value from today's show, I'd appreciate it if you would leave us a 5-star review to help others learn about the show. And if you're ready to fast track your career and increase your income, impact, and joy, then head on over to maryjervich.com and check out the masterclass that teaches you how you can advance too. I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. This and so much more can be found in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you soon.